Coming up, it's EWTN Pro-Life Weekly with Catherine Hadro. Next. EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Welcome. I'm Catherine Hadro, and this is EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. High Court hearing. The Supreme Court will take up a dispute over a Kentucky law banning dismemberment abortions. We speak with a key player in the case, Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron. A matter of life or death. A UK mother battles a hospital to save the life of her 5-year-old daughter, Pippa Knight. We have the details of the heartbreaking case and the ethical questions involved. And finding financial freedom for the family. A Catholic couple with 14 kids tells us how they say yes to life and no to debt as they release a new book packed with wisdom and spiritual insights. The Supreme Court will consider whether Kentucky's pro-life Attorney General can defend the Commonwealth's law banning dismemberment abortions. The High Court announced in late March they will hear an appeal from Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron, who wants to defend a pro-life law that lower courts struck down. The Kentucky law concerns the legality of second trimester abortion procedures, but the Supreme Court will not rule on the law itself. Instead, the question at the center of the case is whether the Attorney General, a pro-life Republican who supports the law, can intervene to defend it in court. The Dismemberment Abortion Ban was signed by former Governor Matt Bevin, a Republican, but it was struck down by lower courts as unconstitutional. The current Kentucky governor, who is Democrat Andy Beshear, has declined to challenge the lower court's decision. Joining us now on Zoom is Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron. Welcome to the show. Attorney General, I understand the Supreme Court case will really focus on a procedural question, but what are the potential consequences of this case? If the Supreme Court rules in your favor, will dismemberment abortions be banned in Kentucky? Explain what's at stake here.
Well, thank you, Catherine, for having me on. This case is about the responsibility and the opportunity for a state attorney general to intervene and defend pro-life legislation that has been passed by our General Assembly. House Bill 454 was passed nearly 3 years ago, and it bans live dismemberment abortion procedures known as D&E, dilation and evacuation procedures. And basically, what we want to do in Kentucky through our General Assembly is show compassion and humanity in the midst of a gruesome procedure, ensuring that a child is not alive during that procedure. This was passed, as I noted, 3 years ago. We have taken it upon ourselves in this office to defend this law. We were working in consultation with Governor Beshear's office. He at some point decided to wash his hands of this important legislation. It is now our responsibility to try to intervene to make sure that we're continuing to defend this law. The Supreme Court will have an opportunity in the fall to hear this case in terms of our role and ability to intervene. And if we get a favorable ruling there, if we're allowed to intervene to defend this law, we'll then go back to the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals and continue to defend this pro-life legislation.
As you mentioned, the Kentucky pro-life law is about banning dismemberment abortions, which is when an abortionist uses instruments to dismember and extract a baby from a woman's uterus during the second trimester of pregnancy. Critics say dismemberment abortions are not a medically accurate term. What's your response to that, and why, in your opinion, is this pro-life law worth fighting for all the way up to the Supreme Court?
Well, I've said from the beginning, my role as the Attorney General is to defend the laws that are duly passed by our elected representatives in the General Assembly, meaning our state House and our state Senate. The folks here in Kentucky have made an assessment that they value life and they value humanity and compassion as it relates to live dismemberment abortions. And so this piece of legislation in particular reflects that humanity and compassion in saying that a child, again, this is a gruesome procedure and no one wants to see it, period. But if it is to happen here in Kentucky, we want to make sure that that child is not alive during it because as was talked about and discussed at the trial court level, it is a painful procedure. We want to make sure that those painful procedures aren't at the expense of a live child. It is a sad and terrible situation. And I'm hopeful that we'll be able to defend this law in the Sixth Circuit if we get a positive ruling from the United States Supreme Court.
Attorney General, you are obviously your state's top lawyer. Last year, you were on former President Donald Trump's short list of potential Supreme Court nominees. I'm curious, from your perspective as a pro-lifer, as a lawyer, what role do you see the Supreme Court having in the pro-life movement and bringing an end to abortion in this nation?
Well, I think they have the end-all, be-all in terms of say as it relates to what abortion looks like and what pro-life looks like in the coming years ahead. Obviously, the decision that was made in Roe v. Wade has had an outsized impact on the pro-life movement since its inception. And so this Supreme Court has a chance, whether it be on live dismemberment procedures that our legislation has said that we need to stop and make sure that there's humanity in that process, or waiting period laws that come up. There was just a decision made in June Medical, which gets rid of a balancing test and moves back to some of the Casey factors that were considered in 1992. And so this court has an opportunity, in my judgment, to really look at these issues again from a new perspective. Obviously, we've got some new justices on. Amy Coney Barrett, Justice Barrett, has recently come to the bench. And so it'll be an interesting time for pro-life legislation.
This is my first time being able to speak with you, Attorney General. Have you always been pro-life, and what does this issue mean to you?
Well, this is an important issue for me. Obviously, my faith background and perspective guides and informs my decisions on pro-life issues. I think it's important for Christians to be involved and Catholics to be involved in this conversation because we recognize the humanity of those that are in the womb and how important it is that we protect those who cannot speak for themselves, who are alive in the womb. That's why when it comes to this live dismemberment abortion bill that we have here in Kentucky that bans it, that's why when it comes to discrimination measures in abortion procedures, where it gets that here in Kentucky as well. And so from a faith perspective, very important, but also from a responsibility as the Attorney General to make sure that we're defending the laws that are passed by our General Assembly. I believe wholeheartedly in my responsibility to carry out that mission as the Attorney General. We're going to continue to do so here in the coming years.
And we will be following this case closely. Daniel Cameron, Kentucky's Attorney General, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Catherine.
And joining us now on Skype is Mallory Quigley, Vice President of Communications for the Susan B. Anthony List. Mallory, welcome back. Let's just take a step back. This Supreme Court case involves Kentucky's dismemberment abortion ban. Can you first explain to viewers the reality of this type of abortion procedure and why this Kentucky pro-life law is important?
Yes, well, this is a very well-named law, Catherine. It prevents abortions, as the Attorney General explained, after a certain time period when the procedure that they're going to use does indeed take apart the body of the child limb by limb. So it's important that we talk about the reality of abortion and the reality of how this procedure is accomplished. As you and the Attorney General were saying, the Supreme Court case that is before them, the question is before them right now is really procedural about whether or not the Attorney General is going to be able to defend that law that was passed with bipartisan support in the Kentucky General Assembly. And the legislators are just using common sense, really plain language to describe what kind of abortion we're talking about here and unborn child is experiencing in that moment.
Kentucky's Attorney General Daniel Cameron just explained and discussed the potential consequences of this case, Cameron versus EMW Women's Surgical Center. Mallory, why is it important the pro-life movement keeps a close eye on what the Supreme Court does here?
Yeah, well, we've been waiting for a while now for the court to rule on abortion. This will be the first, the next time that the court's going to have an opportunity to take some action on abortion, and it will just be an indication of where they're at. I think it would be really encouraging if they rule that, yes, the Attorney General, who ran as a pro-life AG in a very pro-life state, who wants to defend a law that was passed by the legislator. This is the way that the three branches of government ought to be working at this point in time. So it will be very encouraging if the court does allow the AG to defend the law, and it will give us the beginning of, it will begin to show us exactly how the court is going to speak out on these kinds of issues. Like you mentioned, we've got a new Supreme Court thanks to former President Trump.
Speaking of the Supreme Court, President Joe Biden ordered a 180-day study of adding seats to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer just warned against court packing. But Mallory, do you foresee that potentially happening, and what does that mean for the pro-life cause?
Well, as we've seen over and over, the pro-abortion movement and the Democratic Party, unfortunately, they just want to change the rules when they don't get the results that they want. So for decades, the pro-life movement has been working towards the accomplishments that we made under President Trump in terms of being able to appoint and confirm pro-life Supreme Court justices as well as lower court judge appointments. And now the goal of expanding the court would be to dilute that progress. That's what the pro-abortion movement wants. On this commission, it includes former general counsel for NARAL, a law professor Larry Tribe, a longtime pro-abortion activist. So there are people with a policy position here that they want to expand the Supreme Court in order to dilute the gains that we've made under President Trump and have an impact on policy, which would be the continuation of Roe versus Wade.
That's some really important insight there. Mallory Quigley with the Susan B. Anthony List, thank you as always.
Thanks, Catherine.
A mother in the United Kingdom is in disbelief after the UK's High Court ruled that life support treatment for her 5-year-old daughter, Pippa Knight, has to be removed. The young girl began suffering seizures in December 2016. Doctors diagnosed her condition as a rare form of brain damage marked by multiple bilateral lesions. The single mother of Pippa, Paula Parfit, has been fighting a legal battle for months now in hopes of keeping her daughter alive. Specialists at Evelina London Children's Hospital said life support treatment should be removed, and the case went to the Supreme Court, which ruled in the hospital's favor in January. And at the beginning of April, the High Court decided not to hear the mother's appeal. Pippa Knight's case is drawing comparisons to previous high-profile UK cases like Charlie Gard and Alfie Evans, when ventilation was withdrawn from those children against their parents' wishes. Wesley J. Smith joins me now on Skype. He is chair and senior fellow at the Discovery Institute's Center on Human Exceptionalism. He's also a lawyer who writes frequently on these types of cases. Wesley, welcome back. This is not the first time we've talked about a parent in the United Kingdom facing off against a hospital to protect the life of their child. How is it possible it's happening again?
Well, thank you, Catherine. The law in the United Kingdom actually is less protective of parents' rights than the laws in the United States. So in the United Kingdom, what is apparently permitted is that if a hospital believes that it is in the best interest for a child to die, the court will then determine the best interest of that child rather than the parents. But understand, this is something called futile care, F-U-T-I-L-E, sometimes called inappropriate care. And basically what is being done here is, rather than making a medical determination, the court in the United Kingdom is allowing the doctors and the courts to make a value judgment about whether Pippa's life is worth living, when that actually, in my opinion, should be the role of the parents, because the parents are the ones who know Pippa, who love Pippa, and certainly are looking for her best interests. And if they believe that treatment should continue, since it's not a medical issue but a value judgment, it seems to me that that should be their choice.
As of recording time, young Pippa Knight is still alive. Wesley, can you expand more on what we know about her medical condition and her medical needs?
Well, apparently the diagnosis is that she is unconscious. It's sometimes called a persistent vegetative state. I don't like to use the term vegetative because no human being is a cucumber. But apparently the diagnosis is that she's unconscious. And because she's unconscious, the court is saying, well, then there's no point in keeping her alive. But that is basically saying that life itself has no intrinsic value. And I think that's a very dangerous road to go down.
You say there are parallels with this case and a case in Texas involving Tinsley Lewis. What are the similarities and what should we know about Tinsley's situation?
Now, fetal care also happens in the United States, but generally speaking, you don't have the same kind of, let's say, authoritarianism, that's my term, but where the court says not only do we not allow you to keep life support on, but we won't allow you to take the child to another medical center for care. That's what happened in the Charlie Gard case. That's what happened in the Alfie Evans case. In Texas, you have Tinsley Lewis. Tinsley Lewis has a terrible, apparently, heart condition and so forth. They in Texas have a law that says that if a doctor wants to refuse wanted, and I want to emphasize this, wanted life-extending treatment, that the doctor can, and the parents disagree, or the patient surrogates disagree, or the patient disagrees, the doctor can take the case to a bioethics committee at the hospital. And if the hospital rules that the treatment is to stop, that patient only has 10 days within which to find another hospital. And that's a terribly onerous situation for families to be in. And the Tinsley Lewis case, though, added an extra element that's kind of close to Charlie Gard, because the parents found a doctor willing to take the care of Tinsley Lewis, but she would need a surgery, a tracheotomy, in order to be able to be moved, and the hospital refused that as well. Right now, in the Tinsley Lewis case, there's an injunction against removing life support. She's been in this situation, this fetal care situation, about 18 months. The doctor said she would only survive for weeks. They were obviously mistaken. And even though they said that it would be unethical to give her the tracheotomy, it is my understanding that that finally was accomplished about a week ago. So once again, we get into a situation of value judgments. And understand that in fetal care, the treatment isn't being refused because it's not working, but because it is working. In other words, it's keeping the patient alive when the doctor thinks that's not in the best interest of the patient. But who should decide that kind of value judgment? Should it be the patient or the patient's family or surrogate, or strangers like doctors and hospital ethics committees? And I say it should be the patient, patient's family, patient's surrogate. And hopefully that Texas law will be changed soon. There is an attempt right now in the legislature to do just that.
Let's keep both Pippa and Tinsley in our prayers. Thank you for speaking out on this. Wesley J. Smith with the Discovery Institute, thank you.
Thank you, Catherine.
Coming up, a host on The View makes an odd argument for abortion when discussing COVID vaccine passports. I speak out when we return. Plus, a Catholic couple with 14 kids has a new book on how to say yes to life and no to debt.
Hello, family. At EWTN, we feel honored to share the love of Jesus Christ with you and millions of others around the world every day. We know that this work of evangelization is possible because of the providence of God. We can do nothing without Him. We also depend on your support to continue this mission. Through your donations, we can continue to share the daily Mass, live Eucharistic adoration, Sunday Vespers, faith-filled live shows, and news from a Catholic perspective. Every day, we get letters and email from viewers telling us how much they appreciate our programs and content that help them understand, live, and share their faith. Many of these viewers have faced serious problems, including cancer, the loss of loved ones, their children leaving the faith. And EWTN has helped them to face these challenges and find hope in our Lord. Thank you for helping to touch the lives of people around the world with the truth of the eternal Word. May God bless you.
EWTN is 100% viewer supported. Your generosity helps people live truth, live Catholic through free faith-filled programs, Catholic devotions, and content.
For as the body apart from the Spirit is dead, so faith apart from works is dead. James chapter 2, verse 26.
Welcome back to EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. I'm Catherine Hadro. A co-host of ABC's The View pushed for abortion during a segment on COVID-19 vaccines. That is this week's Speak Out segment. During an episode of The View last week, the female co-hosts debated COVID-19 vaccine passports. Meghan McCain brought up the conservative argument about privacy when co-host Sarah Haynes then took the conversation in a different direction. Take a listen.
I cannot argue privacy on a public health issue like this when I don't understand how the most private thing in my body, my uterus, seems to be open for business when it's convenient politically.
That clip was quickly shared by Planned Parenthood on Twitter. McCain responded, tweeting, "I believe life begins at conception. I will never apologize or back down from defending the rights of the most vulnerable in our society, the unborn." Live Action's Lila Rose also weighed in, responding in part, "A baby is not a uterus." Okay, The View is obviously about different viewpoints, and it's meant to stoke controversy and debate, but Haynes' comment was such a disingenuous representation of the pro-life stance and, frankly, of basic biology. As Lila Rose pointed out, a uterus is not a baby. Pro-lifers do support women making their own healthcare decisions, but your choices end when a new body begins. And in regards to Haynes' comment about a woman's body being open for business, that's not a pro-life stance. That's something right out of Planned Parenthood's playbook. There are a lot of views on this topic, but we know that it's the truth that will ultimately prevail.
I would even like to catch them before they go to college, because I think that we have so many friends who are going into so much debt after college that when they're either postponing getting married or postponing having children because they have so much college debt.
Loyal EWTN Pro-Life Weekly viewers may remember when in 2017, we brought you into the home of Rob and Sam Fatzinger. They are a Maryland Catholic couple with 14 kids and, get this, 0 debt. It caught our attention and even the attention of the Washington Post. Now, the Fatzingers have a new book with their pro-family financial tips and tricks, a Catholic guide to spending less and living more. Advice from a debt-free family of 16 will be released on April 23rd. And here to talk more about this, we're joined by Sam and Rob Fatzinger. So good to see you both again. Thank you for being here. Okay, Sam, congratulations on the release of this book. Why is it necessary as a Catholic family to have financial freedom?
I think that we forget that it's our financial responsibility as Christians to remember to tithe and to be good stewards of our money. It's all part of our faith walk. It's not just something separate. And we need to remember that, thy will be done. Whatever the Lord wants you to do, you can do that when you have financial freedom.
Wow, and it's amazing. I mean, a family of 16, and you do. Rob, I know you are the numbers guy. Can you give us a little preview of your top money tips for having a big family and still living debt-free? That's unbelievable.
Sure. For newlyweds or young couples, Sam and I, we started off living off of one salary. We banked hers, and then once we had children, we were used to, when she's staying home, we were used to living a certain way, so it didn't affect us really. Also, pay down any debt, non-mortgage debt, especially the high-interest debt. Pay off the cars, motorcycles, toys. Get rid of that. And everyone says this, but save for a rainy day, because it will happen. I know it's common advice, but it does help.
I think it's just so inspiring to know it's possible. It's possible to not have debt and have a big family. Sam, I don't want to minimize, though, the serious financial stress some families are under, and that not every family will be called to have 14 children. Not every family will be blessed with 14 children. Can you speak to that and just the discernment and prayer involved so that we're achieving what God has planned for us and our family?
It's very hard. Finance problems are very difficult for marriages, so I really encourage people to talk even before their marriage about your values. And thank God that Rob has been really good about putting money away, because there were so many times in our life that we had financial stress with medical bills, or a big trip we had to go on for my son's wedding, which because he had this money put away, that didn't put us in the spiral debt. We had this money and we could enjoy instead of constantly worrying about money. So knowing that money is all part of your, God is part of that decision making with us, having that money put away or having that money definitely balanced us out making these big decisions and not being stuck in this horrible debt.
And I think that money and financial planning, it's overwhelming. I think a lot of people, they don't even know where to begin, and it does stifle a lot of vocations. Rob, we saw birth rates in the United States sharply decline amid the coronavirus pandemic. What's your advice to couples who have anxiety right now about being open to life and saying yes to what God has planned?
Yeah, I say trust and prepare. And trust in God that He has a plan for you and won't give you more than you can handle, but don't just sit around and wait for it. You have to prepare. You have to be ready. So hard work, find any work you can do, save money, find ways to cut back, be smart about your money so you are ready for when the rain comes.
Yeah. No, that's really well said. God doesn't want us to have anxiety about money and about discerning whether or not to be open to life,
I hate when people say to me, oh, we would love to have another kid, but we're in debt. Or I wanted to go into a vocation, but I couldn't because I had debt. Or we have a son who did focused missionary work, and he could do that right out of college because he graduated debt-free. So there was no stress and no hindering that.
Wow. Well, I'm just remembering when I was able to go to your home 4 years ago now, there was this palpable joy and peace, and I think it's just so inspiring to see that that's possible. Thank you both for your witness, and really congratulations on the release of your first book. Again, the book's name is A Catholic Guide to Spending Less and Living More, Advice from a Debt-Free Family of 16. Sam and Rob Batzinger, thank you for your yes, and thanks for being here today.
No, thank you for having us,
Thank you.
Catherine.
So good to see you again.
So good to see you both again. And that does it for this edition of EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. Until next time, we'd love to hear from you. Find us on social media at EWTN Pro-Life on all social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We're there. You can also send us a message by emailing prolifeweekly@EWTN.com. We love to hear from you. Remember, life is a gift. Your life is a gift. God bless.
Defending Life is coming up next on EWTN.
EWTN News In Depth is important for Catholics everywhere. There are so many questions, there are so many unknowns out there as the world continues to change at a rapid pace. We're going to ask the tough questions and get the right answers, and make sure that when you watch this show, you feel engaged and you feel empowered.
EWTN News in Depth. Engaged, informed, Catholic. Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern, here on EWTN.
Hello, Journey Home family. Next time, we'll welcome Jeremy Tate to the program. Jeremy is a former member of the Presbyterian Church in America, and will share his story of how he became Catholic. Share the journey next time on EWTN's The Journey Home.
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Next on Defending Life, find out how you answer some of the hard questions about abortion and how you approach pastors in a positive way to do something about it. Friends, and welcome to Defending Life. I'm Janet Morana, the Executive Director of Priests for Life and co-founder of the Silent No More Awareness Campaign. I'm also a co-host of the EWTN series, The Catholic View for Women. I bring you the personal greetings of our National Director, Father Frank Pavone. And we're pleased to be joined today by Father Scott Daniels, a Dominican priest in New Orleans. Father, welcome back to the program.
Thanks, Janet. Great to see you again.
And it's great